All right, so I want to thank you for coming and welcome. And I am the director of IANDS Charlotte. I'm Tamara Calder Richardson, so I see a lot of new faces. Thank you all for coming, and I see some familiar faces. We're going to just spend 5-7 minutes on announcements and then jump right into the speaker, which I know everybody's super excited. And tonight, our speaker will also be speaking. I'll let her tell you about that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on the speaker. And we're right on time. That's great. So our speaker will be speaking today, right around 1, and then afterwards we'll be selling her books for $20 cash. And some of you that don't know what cash is that paper money thing. She says she can work it where she can invoice you, that you can get the book and she'll invoice you. You can work that out. So so if you are excited and interested, but you're void of cash, that can still be worked out. So I want to go ahead and get started. We're very lucky to have our speaker today, and I'm so embarrassed I have to start with an apology because I keep saying she's from Arizona and our speaker is from Colorado. So apparently energetically I must tie them together because I kept doing that. So that was the brain fog on my part. So our speaker is from Colorado. So let me go ahead and read this. I'm going to be proper about it, so I want to go over her bio as she wants it. So featured on Dr. Oz, Gaia TV, Coast to Coast AM, Dr. Linda Backman is an expert regression therapist and psychologist with 40 years of private practice, including 25 years of guiding soul regressions. Impressive. Linda has assisted many people who have traumatic and transformative experiences. Her latest book is Souls on Earth, Exploring Interplanetary Past Life. That's just so cool. I don't even need to know more. That's amazing. She's also the author of Bringing Your Soul to the Light and The Evolving Soul. Linda established the Raven Heart Center and Training Institute in Boulder, Colorado in 1997 and teaches regularly worldwide about afterlife and between life states. If you want to be in contact with her, and I do want her to go over a little bit about her center at the end, and how she can, how you can continue a dialogue with her or get books or services or possibly upcoming events. She can tell you about that so we can stay posted. And she did give us permission to record her today, which will be in our YouTube, and she can do whatever she wants with that. But she is at the Raven Heart Center. So please give a warm welcome for our speaker, Dr. Linda Backman. Oh, you're wired.
Yeah. Now, do you know how intuitive you are? Because, I'll say this very quickly, because I have a lot I want to cram in today. I lived in Arizona before I moved to Colorado.
Wow. Okay, because I could not stop saying Arizona. I don't normally, I'm usually not that ditzy. But I do.
You're not ditzy, you're intuitive. Oh.
Thank you. I'll take that. Okay, because I just could not. That's funny. Okay, good. Well, if you say Hickory, North Carolina, then I'm really impressed. So that's me before Charlotte.
What about Hickory Grove Elementary School?
Nope.
Do you know where Hickory Grove Elementary School is?
No, but I will tell you that Grove is my grandmother's maiden name.
Well, our children went to Hickory Grove Elementary School. Does anybody know where Hickory Grove is?
Yeah.
So there's Hickory and Grove.
Well, Grove is my family. We're Groves. They used to own the, what do you call it?
Grove Park Inn.
Grove Park Inn.
Really?
I'm not kidding. Yeah, I didn't get any part of that. So very good.
We needed to meet.
Good
Okay,
exchange.
thank you so much. Okay, well, this is a thrill, and I'll tell you quickly why. And that is, you all heard me talk about this. My husband, who's in the back, my husband Earl, my husband of 52 plus years, we lived in Charlotte from 1971 to 1984 because Earl took his first faculty position at UNCC. And that's why our kids went to Hickory Grove Elementary School. So this feels a little bit like coming home. Okay, I want to just dive in and give you just a very nutshell version of my own life and how I got to this point of talking to all of you what I want to share today. So I normally don't add in a piece that goes all the way back to Charlotte, but Earl and I came to Charlotte in our mid-20s. I didn't believe in anything spiritual. I certainly didn't believe in past lives back then. I didn't understand the soul back then, except that we went through a very transformative experience, I guess I'll say, when we lived in Charlotte. And our second baby was our second and third babies were born at what was once Charlotte Memorial Hospital, which is now this big, crazy complex. But our second baby was born prematurely and died within a few hours. And that was my first, I would say, conscious transformative experience of children die, and how do you deal with grief, and how do you deal with loss. And so that happened in Charlotte. It was a powerful and challenging experience. It led me to figure out what do we go through when we're grieving. It led me to go back to school and become ultimately a psychologist. And if any of you know the agency in Charlotte called Kinder Morn, anybody know about Kinder Morn? So I co-founded that agency in the 70s with Lucy Christopher. And my heart has always been in grief work and the loss of children. So anyway, we left Charlotte, and we moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, and Earl took a deanship position at Northern Arizona University. So again, you were right on target. And there my life changed. And essentially what happened was, in 1993, this is my key spiritual, STE rather than NDE. My colleague, my original psychologist colleague, passed in the spring of 1993. He was a man 14 years younger than I, and suddenly he was talking to me from the other side. And I was being shown scenes of past lives. And I was a psychologist by that point, so I thought, well, psychologists don't do this kind of work. And oh my gosh, what if I tell my medical doctor referral sources, referring into my practice, that I'm talking to a soul on the other side, and that soul is showing me past lives. Except I knew, in my heart of hearts, I knew it was real. I had no doubt that was my colleague communicating with me. I later validated some of the information he was giving me through a capable channel. And he started showing me scenes of past lives. So back then I thought, what in the heck is wrong with me? What's going on? And I said to my husband, who'd already been my husband for about 25 years, I said, I need to tell you what's going on, and if you think I'm crazy, honey, you can just tell me you think I'm crazy. So I explained to Earl what was going on in terms of past lives with my colleague, and he said, well, I don't think that's crazy. And I thought, you don't? Well, why not? And basically Earl said, because only now do I remember, does Earl remember, he said, that when he was a boy growing up, he spontaneously remembered his past lives. So I thought, well, maybe I'm not so crazy. So then what happened from 1993 until now is that slowly my whole work life changed, in many ways my life changed, and I began to understand that I wanted to know about the soul. I wanted to know, what is a soul? Where does our soul come from? Not from any particular religious perspective, except that you can certainly fit the whole notion of God, the divine, Great Spirit, the Tao into the perspective. But who are we? Why do we have memories that we can't explain, but we remember? We go to a city in a foreign country, and someone says, have you seen the, blah, blah, blah church? And you go, well, I've seen it in pictures, but I know how to get there because I know how to walk there. Okay? So I want to try to fit in as much as I can in about an hour of what have I learned about what is the soul, how and why do we evolve, what are past lives, what does this have to do with NDEs and STEs, Spiritually Transformative Experiences, and why do I do what I do? So, I would say the bottom line is that we all need to know we're divine in body and we're divine in spirit. So what I learned early on as I started training in this work, one of my mentors was a man by the name of Dr. Michael Newton. Does that name ring a bell? Some of you have read Michael's books. So Michael Newton is on the other side now. He developed a regression tool called Life Between Lives Spiritual Regression. And so what I've been guiding for 25 years is regression work both into past lives, and how does that explain our current evolution, which I'll say more about in a minute, and who are we as a soul? Why are we here? How did we plan our life? What are we working on now? Why are I'm sure this probably fits for most of us here, why do we feel so different than a lot of other people on the planet? Why do we see the world in a different way? What did we come to do? What's our purpose? And so on and so forth. So it's my absolutely favorite topic. And if you're interested in reading more, all 3 of my books are simply filled with client material. I believe the clients write the books. So I work in past lives. How do those past lives explain your current life? And I work with people at the soul level. And how does that explain who you are and why you're here? So let me talk a little bit about soul evolution. Okay? My understanding is that the soul is divine. The soul is created at a very high frequency. You could call it God, you could call it Great Spirit, you could call it whatever fits for you. Okay? There's all kinds of terms. Or in a religious context can fit and doesn't have to fit. Okay? Let me just share something briefly. I have a very dear friend who's grieving the death of her husband. She's very traditionally Christian. And she began to talk to me about she's going to get through her grief because she knows that God is joy and God is hope. Okay? And I thought, great. If that's going to, I am not a traditionally religious person, but her belief in that is so strong that I think it will get her through. So recently I worked with a client, not the friend, but a client. A woman who's a very advanced soul, who is not traditionally religious or Christian, Western religion. Eastern religion obviously has taught this for forever. You probably all know that. And my client, in accessing where souls are created, basically said, the divine is joy and the divine is hope. And I thought, because in some ways, if you don't want to be traditionally religious in a westernized way, some of you may go, oh, that's kind of canned, and that just seems, that seems kind of canned. Except I think it's not. Because I heard it from 2 people with 2 different orientations to life. Okay? So souls are created at a very high level. We almost can't comprehend that level with the brain we have in these, these skulls of ours. And when we're in body, I might say we're tripart. When we're in body, we're body, like a particular type of body, tall, short, thin, not so thin, light skinned, dark skinned, great vision, not such great vision, blah, 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 blah. And then we also have a brain, gray matter, that sits in our skull, that connotes intelligence and memory capability and sometimes great skills with color or great skills with music or great skills with writing that sit in this gray matter that, I had to study all that kind of stuff to become a psychologist. And the third part is soul. So through the course of probably between my mentor and myself, 10,000 regressions to understand at the soul level, when does the soul join the body? When does that slice of soul, that aspect of our soul, come into body and basically initially attach in? On average, because this question has been asked in regressions without prompting the client, on average the soul connects with the baby's body developing in utero in the middle 3 months or the middle trimester. Okay. I have never worked with a client, nor did my mentor Michael Newton, who said we're born without a soul. Okay? So our soul comes in about mid-pregnancy. It may touch in and leave and touch in and leave, but at birth the soul is embedded in the body. And those are those past life memories. Our past lives also can affect our physical appearance. Okay? Here's an example. And I realize I'm jumping all around. This always happens for me when I start talking. But I love this topic, and I could talk forever on this topic. There are some researchers that believe that the politician John Kerry is the soul of President Andrew Jackson. Okay? Go compare, if you're interested, pictures of John Kerry's face and Andrew Jackson's face. Go compare certain elements and circumstances in their lives. And I think it's probably valid that John Kerry was Andrew Jackson. Okay? Now, were we all famous people? Of course not. Do most of my clients discover past lives where they were famous? No, only on rare occasion. But the bottom line is that the orientation of who we were before shows up in our life today. And I don't mean that if you were the head of a country like Andrew Jackson, that you have to be, John Kerry who runs for president. Okay? It means you have a certain belief structure and orientation in your life. So my understanding about the soul from 25 years of guiding clients, and what is crucial to me, the one cardinal rule that when I teach regression to people, the cardinal rule is don't lead the witness. Even if you're so intuitive that you know that I lived in Arizona, or you kind of got that confused, as a regression therapist, my job is to facilitate, but not to put information in the mind of the client. The client tells me, I don't tell them. Okay? And so then we come to understand who have we been before and why are we here now? So the soul is required to evolve. Our soul is pure divine energy, and we're required to incarnate because we evolve primarily in body, not out of body. And so we evolve in places like Earth, and many people will say, and I think it's probably valid, this may be the hardest laboratory. This may be the toughest place to be embodied. Okay? So it's sort of like children in most states in the United States and most countries in the world are required to go to school. The soul is required to go to school. And as we evolve, it's the as above, so below concept. As we evolve, the universe evolves. Okay? So we talk about karma and dharma. Okay, so probably everybody knows what karma means. In your past lives, you had free will. In your past lives, you made free will choices. You had an agreement to come in as a man, a woman, and you had various agreements to work on certain evolutionary pieces of your life, of each life. But you have free will. On Earth, you have free will. It's one of the ways that Earth was designed. So we make free will choices. And we don't always make the most useful free will choices because we have this human mind. And we make choices that in subsequent lives we have to balance. Okay? That is karma. We also gather dharma. So dharma's maybe some of you know what that word means. That dharma is a Sanskrit word. Technically speaking, it means right behavior or right action. And what it means from a soul perspective is I accomplished what I intended to accomplish in a life. So when I guide clients, just talk for a minute about guiding clients to access past lives. The client accesses, usually it's one past life at a time in detail. And that past life has a direct connectivity, a direct explanation to life today. And what will come up for the client is either something karmic from the past that they either need to balance in life today or are already balancing, Or sometimes it's dharmic. Sometimes it's the client's guides. And I'll talk a little bit this morning about guides. I'm going to talk more tonight about guides because that's a longer subject. We all have spiritual guides. Sometimes it's dharmic. What did you accomplish in a past life that in life today you don't give yourself credit for? Okay. So, I'll say we, not you, because it includes me. We all have karma, or we wouldn't still be coming back into body. We all have dharma. I would hazard to say, let me interject this. If you're interested in IANDS and near-death and soul and past lives and spiritual kinds of things, you are not a young soul. You are not a baby soul in one of your first few incarnations. Because you wouldn't be interested in those kinds of things. You wouldn't have climbed the, if you think about, if anybody knows about Maslow's hierarchy, okay? You are reaching higher levels of Maslow's hierarchy because you're concerned about humanity. You're concerned about progress on this planet. You're concerned about, fancy language, self-actualization. Okay? So if you're sitting in this room and you wanted to come to an IANDS meeting and you wanted to come listen to me on this particular Saturday, it means you carry a fair amount of Dharma along with karma, okay? All these thoughts pop in. It's like I want to say to my guide, slow down, too many things to try to talk about at once. The common misconception that some of my clients talk about is, well, Linda, if I'm a more evolved soul, then doesn't life get easier versus harder? Yeah, I love that you're shaking your head and you're saying no. And that's the answer. And does that mean, am I trying to say we don't occasionally have a moderately easy incarnation? Yes, we do at times. But the more advanced you are, the more weight on your shoulders. The more advanced you are, for all of us maybe that it struggle at times with issues in our life and that sort of thing, the more advanced you are, the more heavy your life contract is. There's more specific line items in your contract because you came into body, okay, to help not only your own soul evolve. Of course you came into body because that is the only reason we come into body, is to evolve. But you came into body to help evolve this place called Earth and this place called humanity. So when I was 24 and Earl was 25, and I went through about 4 months of, Mrs. Backman, you're going to miscarry today. No, Mrs. Backman, I think you're all right. No, 2 days later. No, I think you're going to miscarry today. No, you're all right. That's what went on for 4 months because I'm so old. It was pre-ultrasound days. Okay. And when our second son was born, and he lived a few hours and died, and honestly, I was a wreck. But later, when I learned about past lives, many, many years later, I discovered I'd had some past lives where I was a pretty neglectful mother. I had children, and I was more into my social scene, and I actually was kind of politically oriented. Not some prominent figure, and not a name that I could give you that you can go read about. But I neglected my children. And Earl wasn't my husband. Maybe he wouldn't have been my husband if I'd been like that. I don't know, but he wasn't my husband. And so I had to learn about loss. I had to learn about death of children. I had to learn about grief and how to survive that. It's a very interesting experience. That's a poor choice of words. That's too simple a word, but it's a powerful experience. Earl and I haven't been back in Charlotte. We left here 35 years ago, but we've only been back a time or two over the course of that 35 years. It's powerful to come back and look at the circle of my life. So think about the circle of your life. what are those, what you might call high points, not the city that's north of here, and what are those low points? And what do they tell you about your life? And how did you deal, or how are you dealing with a high point or a low point? Because it's all about the evolution of your soul. Okay. So, I always have all these notes, and it's like I'm realizing I'm jumping all around and not following my notes, but that's okay. When I studied regression work, and when I studied soul regression work, which is past life, and then the client works at their soul level, the couple of mentors that I had said, Linda, people have lives on Earth, and people have lives not on Earth. And I kind of thought, okay, that kind of makes some sense. And then about 10 years into my 25, 26 years of guiding regression work, about maybe 15 years ago, it's hard to keep track, I started realizing that in my regression practice, and I regress clients almost every week of the year, not that I don't take vacations, but I regress usually far more than one client a week. I started realizing that suddenly, about 15 years ago, about 50% of my clients were going to past lives not on Earth. Now, I don't tell the client where to go. I don't choose the life. The life is chosen. I'm the facilitator. In shamanism, you would call me the hollow bone or the conduit, okay? The client goes to the past life. Their guides and soul self, higher self, soul self, want them to discover, because that past life directly relates to current life and directly explains things in current life. So I realized that about 50% of my clients were discovering a life not on Earth. And I began to learn a lot about currently incarnating souls that don't primarily incarnate here. So one of my books on the back table, the most recent book that came out last year, that's called Souls on Earth. If you're interested in interplanetary past lives and how that relates to life today, and I'll give you kind of a little nutshell version of that, go read that book, if you will. I think you'll find it very enlightening and very helpful if you think there's something wrong with you, or you think you're too weird, or you think it's crazy to think you would live somewhere else. If you think that, and I can tell you that if you met many of my clients, some of them would look unusual, and some would look as standard as however standard might look. Okay? Souls that come to Earth that have primarily incarnated elsewhere, term that I was given by my guides is interplanetary souls. Okay? That simply means that if you're an interplanetary soul, it means primarily you've not incarnated here. It means primarily you've incarnated in a star system, a planet, and also interdimensional space or non-dense space. Okay? Now, a lot of people will say, excuse me, well, I know I'm from Sirius. I know I'm Arcturian. I know I'm Pleiadian. I know I'm, this maybe new material, may not be. I know I'm an insectoid. I know I was a gray. I know I'm a mantis being. Okay? So there are all kinds of places where interplanetary souls come from. The key element, the key automatic truism, if you're an interplanetary soul, and some of you may not be. I am not an interplanetary soul. Okay? So the key truth about IP souls, interplanetary souls, is that your home base is not the spiritual realm tied to Earth. Your home base is somewhere in the universe, and where you come from is highly, highly evolved. And that's the only reason you come to Earth, is that you bring your high soul evolution here to do something on this planet that will help evolve this planet. Okay? And I don't mean you don't have to be standing up, giving speeches and writing books. You can be the person in your neighborhood that teaches your next door neighbor organic gardening. You can be the person in your neighborhood that takes a meal 3 days a week to an elderly person that lives in your neighborhood. And because we get too ego-oriented as humans, it's like, well, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not doing the right thing. No, maybe you are doing exactly what you came to do, and it doesn't have to be magnanimous. But if you're an IP soul, usually you know you're unique, and you also have a very highly evolved perspective on life. Okay? Let me add in, just because I think it's important. And I know I'll probably keep saying, well, I'll talk more about that tonight, so hopefully you all come back tonight. But my understanding so far, and my guides keep teaching me, they bring the clients into my practice, and hopefully the clients are benefiting. I think most of the time they are, hopefully they are, but they're teaching me as well, so that I can support more clients to understand themselves. Some of us are earth-based, okay? I'm an earth-based soul. I have been incarnating this soul that, resides inside Linda's body, this slice of my soul. We don't bring 100% of our soul into our body. Our body couldn't manage the energy. And we need a higher self at the same time. I've been coming here probably sort of ad nauseum since the early time of Earth, when Earth just began to grow and evolve with upright biped beings. Okay? So I said to my guides at one point, it took me years, but I learned how to talk to my guides. Well, why did you choose me to gather this IP information to put into a book that you pushed me to write? And they said, well, that's just the point. We wanted an earth-based soul. We wanted a soul, Linda, who had a lot of experience working on Earth and working in a human body, because you understand the human body, you function, relatively speaking, moderately well in a human body. IP souls don't at times function as easily in a human body. They know they're wise, and I don't mean ego-wise kind of stuff. They said we wanted an earth-based soul to bring this material forward. So you might be an earth-based soul, you might be an interplanetary soul, and I've learned there's a third category. Okay? Anybody have a hunch about where else souls might come from? Or where else, what other qualitative difference or group of souls, small number of these souls on Earth?
Bad souls. I want to say those from hell.
Oh, I'm glad you're bringing that up, and let me say more about that in a second. No, that's actually not what I mean, but let me comment about that in a second.
I don't know if I have the right words for it, but it feels like the souls that have not been incarnated, that have been more, I don't want to say guides, but elders, that occasionally they're put here because things have gone sideways, and they're put here. They're like, all right, I'll do it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it really, it's got to be tough.
Yeah, that's relatively speaking, that is the direction I'm going. Although some of us as earth-based souls and some of us as IP souls are highly, highly evolved. And we may already be serving as guides from the spiritual realm, but we're also still incarnating. That's a possibility. But nonetheless, you're going in the right direction. There
Angels?
are, oh,
Angels?
you got it.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Either elders or the angels. I met 2 people that were angels.
Angelic Realm, I call them Angelic Realm souls. Angelic Realm souls, when I stand up here and tell you what I think I know is true, it's from client after client after client after client. And where the overlap happens, and I keep hearing similar things, that's where I believe, it's sort of like case study research. It's like, okay, 15 clients have told me basically the same thing. It's got to be valid. I didn't tell them, they told me. So, quick comment. I don't want to go too far right now with Angelic Realm souls, and I'll talk more tonight about it. So, my understanding is that there is a group of souls that directly support the divine. And, well, all right, let me add in a quick piece here. I used to think, so I wasn't raised Christian, I was raised Jewish. I was raised pretty strongly, not Orthodox, but I was raised pretty strongly in a Jewish family. I didn't think the Jews believed in the archangels until I started studying Kabbalah. And then I realized, oh, Linda, you learned general American Judaism when you were a kid. I didn't learn Kabbalah until I was well into my adult years. So I used to think this was very airy-fairy and not very real. The Angelic Realm is a group of souls whose job, you might say, they work in direct support of the divine, headed by the 4 archangels, overseen, if you will, coordinated by the 4 archangels. And generally, Angelic Realm, I call them AR, generally AR souls do not incarnate. They are also highly evolved. My understanding is that right now the guides of Earth are trying to figure out, as you said, to get us past this horrible stuck place on this planet. And so they've decided, this is what I've heard from far more than one client, they've decided to try bringing more AR souls to Earth. Qualitatively, an AR soul is a different kind of person. Okay? They have a different energy and a different way about them. They are pure love and compassion. Almost, I don't want to say to a fault, but almost, they're so loving that they almost can't deal with life or people that are different than that. They are pure, and we need their energy. We need their wisdom. We need their perspective. Let me, just so I don't forget, because I want to come back to your comment. It was an important comment. See how to kind of put this into context. First of all, let me say that in 25, 26 years of guiding clients, I have never had a client tell me there's a literal place called hell. I have honest, and I don't know how many clients I've guided, but it's a lot. I don't think that hell, as we are taught about it in especially Christian religion, is real. What I think is real is that when we finish a lifetime, and in a minute I realize, and I want to be sure to add this in, I want to fit together soul regression that I guide with NDE, because I want you to see how that links up together. When we die and our soul exits our soul, one of the first steps of finishing an incarnation, no matter how old you were when you died, or what caused your death, or no matter, you come upon, and I know this is going to be kind of an intense word, but I'm going to use it, you come upon a tribunal. Okay? You come upon, some would say, council of elders. You are required to meet with the tribunal. And they say, so how'd you do? Really. And if you go, I mean, I could probably pull up an example, but I won't. I did great. This was great. I did this really well. Blah, 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 blah. I don't want to use names, but I wish I could come up with an example that was an appropriate example, but I won't do that right now. And they go, oh, huh. Now remember, you sold your neighbor that lawnmower that you said was new. So you wanted, whatever, I haven't bought a lawnmower in a long time, you wanted $350. But no, you've been using that lawnmower for 18 months. What about that? Or other much more deleterious kinds of things like are going on our planet right now. What that tribunal expects is honesty. And I'm not going to say it doesn't matter what you did, because if you did some things that were really extremely heinous, that probably matters more than if you one time told your neighbor, about this lawnmower thing. But nonetheless, the tribunal says how'd you do, and you need to be honest. If you're honest, it's pretty okay. If you're not honest, and you did your actions and your style of life was pretty dishonest or pretty, lacking in integrity, then you're going to be sat down, taught. Your next life may be rather challenging, but I don't think hell exists. I really don't. So when I made the comment, hell doesn't exist, I don't want you to think it's like, well, the guides just shine it on. No, they don't just shine it on. Okay. So let me see if I can fit together NDE with what I've learned from soul regression. And just out of curiosity, I'm not going to ask you to tell me about your NDE. How many people in the room have had at least one near-death experience? Okay, a number of you have not. How many people in the room have had a spiritually transformative experience of any sort? Okay, okay, interesting, okay. Well, sometimes people will say to me, well, Linda, a lot of the descriptions of near-death experience are warm and divine and accepting and joyful and loving, okay? But Linda, you talk about this tribunal. Or Linda, you talk about at the soul level, we're required to keep balancing our karma in order to evolve. So what I think probably occurs in a near-death experience, and it's interesting, I've not had a near-death experience. I was on a panel this past February at one of the largest spiritual expos in the country in Los Angeles. And I was there with a whole group of everybody else on the panel was a known person, a writer, a speaker, who'd had an NDE. And the reason they asked me to be on the panel is because I've worked with so many clients who have died and crossed over and died and crossed over and died and crossed over. So, I have some sense of what happens when we die. I believe at times that an NDE happens in the upper levels of the astral plane. Okay, so let me put context to that. And this maybe makes sense to everybody. Third dimension, okay? This earth we're standing on, this body exists in third dimension. Call it the middle world, okay? Fourth dimension is the energetic space between, or the higher frequency between third dimension or earth and the spiritual realm, fifth dimension and beyond, where our guides and our soul resides. Okay? The astral plane has levels, the higher levels that are at a higher frequency. Our guides have the ability to drop their frequency from the fifth dimension. They know how to do that. Many of us know how to increase our frequency. Many of us with ongoing spiritual practices and using intuition, we know how to elevate our frequency. So we meet in the astral plane. I suspect, I don't know for sure, I suspect that NDEs happen in the upper levels of the astral plane. When I guide clients to access their soul level following the death in a past life that comes forward in the regression work, and then we work at the soul level, I suspect we're working either at the highest level, the seventh level of the astral plane, or maybe that first level into fifth dimension. And that's where we can come to understand, how did I plan my current life? Why do I have this physical issue? What does it have to do with current life? How can I deal with this? Where do I come from if I'm an interplanetary soul? Or if I'm an angelic realm soul, accessing, last week I worked with a particular client who's an Angelic Realm soul, and she was accessing the divine. And I suspect she was somewhere in between 7th level of astral and very lower levels of 5th dimension. Archangel Michael was her, I don't want to say guide, he was her kind of conveyor to the higher level. And Archangel Michael came in first. And then Archangel Michael brought forward a connection for her with what she called the all. The all. So, this is what I love to do. This is why that beloved second child of ours was born and died in this city. I didn't know that back then. This is why my lovely colleague, why I was able to hear him from the other side, because we need to know about who we are as a soul. And I believe that when we understand that and accept that, then we understand, why do I have this phobia that nobody's been able to explain? Why do I have this health issue? I'll give you a quick example in a minute, but why do I have this health issue that has plagued me for years and no doctor can explain it? Why do I crave a group like this? Or why do I crave that day that you were talking about, like come at 9:30 and then do 2 hours and then stay here till 1 and then go have lunch? And it's like, you know, like feed me, feed me, feed me. Okay? Okay? So, I want to say a whole lot more, but I also want to be sure that I'm going to go in maybe another 10, 15 minutes. I want to be sure that we have Q&A time. Because to me, Q&A time is as important, if not more important, than what I'm spontaneously talking to all of you about. Because your guides put questions in your minds that you need to ask, because we need to talk about the content of that question. Okay? Let me say a little bit more about interplanetary souls. And I'm always curious, and we can't have a conversation and that I wish we could have. I really love one-on-one work. But and so how many of you either think you might be an interplanetary soul, or you think you know an interplanetary soul? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Earl and I have a grandchild who has a ton of interplanetary experience. We knew that almost before he was a year old. Okay? Let me talk about interplanetary souls. What's unique and what are the challenges of interplanetary souls? So, I think probably the primary reason that my guides started sending all these IPs into my practice is because IPs sometimes struggle to be embodied. And they need to understand who they are and why they're struggling with what they're struggling with, and to know they need to be here because it's crucial that they're here. So let me talk about some of the signs and symptoms and earmarkings about interplanetary souls. Okay. I'm going to first give you, I love stories. I think stories tell us, it's just a beautiful way of sharing things. So, our grandson is now 13. This particular, we have more than one grandson. We're very blessed in that respect. But our grandson that I'm going to tell you about is 13. When he was 4, maybe 5, and again, Earl and I already knew he was an interplanetary soul. We gently tried to say some things to his parents, our son and daughter-in-law, but you know, we're the weirdo grandparents here and all this kind of stuff. You know. Our grandson did not. He was potty trained. He was urine trained pretty easily. but he was 4, maybe 5 when we were visiting them where they live in San Francisco. And he was about to go to school, and he had to be trained, bowel trained as well. And he had refused and refused and refused. And so this was a particular night where, bless the determination of our daughter-in-law, he hadn't gone in maybe a couple of days, and obviously she didn't want him to get, intestinal blockage. And she insisted she wasn't going to give him the pull-up and let him go behind the couch and do his thing and then clean this up. It was going to happen where it needed to happen. And Earl and I were just trying to be supportive, but this is a classic example, and you may think, well, this is Linda's strange example here. So we're just supporting our son and daughter-in-law. We're zip it up, we're making no comments. And I watched our grandson that night as our daughter-in-law worked with him in the bathroom to get him to just have this natural process occur where it needs to occur. And the fear I saw on his face, it honestly brought me to tears. I stayed out of the mix because I knew that our daughter-in-law needed to be doing exactly what she was doing. But the fear, what I saw in his face wasn't what we call in psychology oppositional behavior. The look on his face was sheer terror at this physical process that he wasn't accustomed to as an interplanetary soul. Like, what is this? Interplanetary souls don't eat and have the physical, excretion processes that we do. Some do, maybe, but they don't all. Interplanetary souls come in all different types of packaging and bodies and all of that. And I watched how frightened he was, and it broke my heart, except I knew it was time for him to be bowel trained, and he's perfectly fine now, and he learned how to do what he needed to do, and he's totally fine. But it was a clear example of an IP soul. He's been diagnosed ADHD. He's in a special school. He's doing really well and much better. So IPs are often unique. They have, as kids, they often have learning challenges. As adults, they may still have learning challenges. They have a lot of autoimmune disorders, a lot of allergies, a lot of digestive issues, not just the digestive issues of just learning to, use the toilet as it needs to be used. They're ADHD. They're also very, very wise and very, very skilled. And highly skilled in something usually unique. Okay? Some of you probably watch, Ellen DeGeneres has a lot of these kinds of kids. I also like to watch America's Got Talent. Some of these young children who have these talents, these musical abilities, you're probably watching an IP soul. We need IPs on the planet, again, because if you're an interplanetary soul, you have a soul home base that isn't energetically tied to Earth's spiritual realm. It's energetically, your home base is in the universe where your soul originates. And again, it could be within our star system. It could be outside of our star system. Usually it's within our galaxy, but not always. And again, can be a planet. I know I just said star system. I mean solar system. Could be within our solar system or outside. Could be a planet, could be a star system, could be interdimensional space. Okay. Think about fears and phobias that you have no explanation for. Okay? You've always wanted to travel abroad, but you're scared to death to get on a plane and fly over an ocean. You've always wanted to go on a cruise, but for no reason that you know, you're afraid to get on a ship that goes out in the middle of the ocean and you can't see land. You've always, let me change this. You're a man and you're married and your wife's ready to start a family. And as the man, you don't know why, but you're scared to death for your wife to give birth. Your wife in a past life probably gave birth, and either the baby died or your wife died or both. Okay? So unexplained fears, phobias, things that you have no rational explanation for in life today, probably past life. Or someone says to you, have you ever been to Japan? And you go, oh, no, I'm not really interested. Well, you know, I could pay your way and you could go for 2 weeks and your job will be fine and your kids and your plants and your animals and all that will be fine. Want to go to Japan with me? No, never been there, don't want to go there. Past life. Okay. So, I'm going to cover one more topic and then let's do questions. Think about what might be some of your life agreements this time. Think about what might be your reasons for coming into body. And try to imagine if you had 3 aspects of your life purpose, what that would be. Why did you come into body? Okay? It's going to relate to people in your life, something you had to work through. It's going to relate to either the work that you do, it's going to relate to either the paid work that you do or the voluntary work that you do. It may not be your paid work. You might say, well, you know, I'm an accountant and that's fine and it pays the bills, but my real love is running the Charlotte IANDS group or going to the Humane Society twice a month and helping out at the Humane Society. Okay. It might be learning to deal with loss of a child so that you're a committed parent. Okay? Think about that. And think about the most, when you think about your life purpose, now bring to mind an extremely difficult circumstance that happened in your life. It might be a relationship. Okay? I'll give you an example. My mother passed about 5 years ago. And through the whole course of my life, I struggled with my mother. She was a challenging person. Now, a lot of people agreed, it wasn't just me, but a lot of people thought that she was a challenging person. But she was my mother, you know, and we all have this idealistic perspective of, well, but she's my mother, so she's supposed to be warm and cozy and nurturing, and my mother, bless her heart, she tried to be, but it just wasn't her flavor of personality. Okay? As she got older, I have a sibling, and that sibling isn't a caretaker type. We'll just leave it at that. So once my dad passed, and my mom got into her late 80s, and she wasn't doing well by herself, I knew that I would make sure she was cared for the rest of her life. Did I really want to? Part of me did and part of me didn't. Okay? I would say to Earl, oh my gosh, what are we going to do when mom's not doing very well anymore and she needs more care? But that happened, as it does. So when she was in her late 80s, we moved her from one state to another to live near us. She lived in Arizona and we lived in Colorado. So we moved her into a wonderful, multifaceted senior citizens facility with all levels of care, about half an hour from us. And was she always easy? No. But when she got into the last 2 or 3 years of her life, I discovered a past life with the soul of my mother. And in that past life, just to cut to the chase and make it simple, In that past life, I was married, and I had a 10-year-old daughter. The 10-year-old daughter, I was married and had a daughter. The daughter is the soul of my mother. My husband had huge political aspirations. I was deeply in love with my husband. He was quite a bit older than I. And basically he walked out of the marriage when our daughter was probably 2 years old and went off to do his political thing. And I was left to raise the daughter. But I let myself become completely overcome with grief over the loss of my husband. And when I was, probably in my 30s, maybe early 40s, 30s I think, and when our daughter was 10, I willed myself to die. Her father had already walked out of her life, and I willed myself to die when she was 10, and so she was abandoned by both parents. When I discovered that was the soul of my mother, I realized why I had known for years I had to care for Mom. I had to make sure she was taken care of. And it didn't make any sense. She drove me crazy. I at times would complain to my husband about her a lot. But the beauty of the whole thing was that I did stick with my commitment. And before my mother died, we had made peace with each other. I am so blessed that this happened. We'd made peace with each other. We'd said, I love you to each other, and we'd never done that. And she essentially died in my arms. She died, I was right next to her when she took her last breath, which is exactly the way I wanted it to be. Follow your hunches, your gotta do this, don't know why kind of feelings. Because oftentimes they're in your life contract. And remember, we have options. We can say, oh, I'm going to nix that line in my life contract. I could have nixed it. I'm so glad I didn't. Yeah. Okay. I could say a whole lot more, but let's shift to questions. Anybody have a burning question? Okay, let's go here first and then we'll come over here. Yeah.
You discuss animals, do they have souls?
Yes. Animals have, maybe I'll repeat the question, so that's important. What about souls? What about animals? Do they have souls? Answer is yes. My understanding is that, and I'm not talking about an interplanetary soul now, I'm talking about a dog, a cat, a horse. They have souls. My understanding is where their souls come from is somewhat different than where souls in incarnated humans come from. Now the tricky part, and that's used to be my pat answer, but now the tricky part is we know from shamanic teachings about shape-shifting. We know that a soul can impact an animal and impact its behavior. So I'm, kind of giving you a little bit of a flat answer, but absolutely yes, animals have souls and they can reincarnate with us repetitively. Yeah.
Okay, I have two quick ones. The first one would be, how can an IP show, or why would an IP be here to show or help humans have more humanity if they're really not human?
Ooh, okay.
It's a good one. It's just in my head.
No, it's a good one, but I think it's easily answered. That's why the IP comes into a human body. Because when a soul that generally doesn't incarnate as a human is here in human form, then they contribute through action, behavior, way of life to humanity's progress.
I don't know, it just seems sort of like a contradiction, and they're not that best at being human,
But they have wisdom that often they have a level of wisdom and perspective on life that some either younger, that some earth-based souls don't have, and especially younger earth-based souls. They bring their wisdom with them. They may create a technology that hasn't been created by earth-based souls. They may create a medical procedure or type of medicine or some progressive medical aspect.
Okay.
So they come to do human things to help us.
Okay, that makes sense. The next question is this, it's just, I don't know if I can put this in the proper sentence, but saints, you know, if anyone, I'm not Catholic, but I've learned about saints, and they have usually really crappy lives. So, why is it that some people say, oh, everybody has hardship and blah, blah, blah. Some people I met really don't. They just sail through it, and I know it's their contract and their life contract, but that some people struggle. Why is it that you would choose, I mean, maybe you don't want to sail through things, but why would you choose, I mean, no one chooses child abuse, no one chooses rape. They may say, hey, yeah, I'll struggle with it. They may not realize that's part of it till later, but why is it necessary to do that? Why can't you know, why is the struggle and the harder struggle necessary for some? You think, in your opinion?
Oh, yeah, but my opinion, as well as lots of client work. It's like, you know, there's so many things I want to say as an answer. I'm trying to, you know, make it all hang together because it's this piece and this piece and this piece. Some of us do come into body choosing to be in a family where there's abuse, where there's alcoholism, where there's a single parent, where there's poverty. Because it's either for our growth as a soul, or we come in to be teachers for others and demonstrate how to deal with that. So that's one piece of the answer. Another piece would be sometimes it isn't planned. And sometimes it's free will choice on the part of a parent, a sibling, an uncle, a grandparent, whatever. But the overriding thing I want to say that I think is so important is that we've all had lives where we did horrible things. And if you think that's not the case, I just have to say I think that's not true. I know of a lot of my past lives. I've studied my own past lives. And I have some lives that, when I learned about them, I'm ashamed. But I know that's how we grow and evolve. That's how we benefit. I had a life during the Spanish Inquisition. I killed and murdered Muslims and Jews. And, you know, kicked them out of the country. Think about what we learn from those lives of how not to be. So sometimes it's scheduled or planned, and sometimes it's free will choice. But we've all been the perpetrator and the victim. And that's how we grow. As much as, you know, as much as maybe, you know, traditional Western religion wants to make it la-di-da-di-da, the soul is perfect. I do not believe the soul is perfect. I don't believe anything in the spiritual realm is perfect because it's perfecting and expanding and perfecting and expanding based on incarnation. So, good question, great question. More questions, yeah.
Any idea to what end? Because it seems like there's a mechanism and we're aware of the mechanism. Can we see it? And are we a victim of it? Are we stuck? Are we, oh, you're going to go back and you're going to learn this time. And, oh, well, I've got something else for you to do. You know, like we're stuck in this treadmill of souls that we pick up. Some people maybe evolve one incarnation and they're less evolved than another. Is there a progression? Is there an ultimate end?
Oh, yes. Okay, good question. Thank you. This is why I love questions. Yes, there is a progression and there is an end. But let me say what we're working toward and, you know, what may happen if there is an end. The universe, Earth and the universe are designed to evolve. Okay? I've learned a lot. I'll probably fit this in tonight when I talk. There is an Earth Council, a council of evolved souls that almost like an Earth Congress or Parliament. The higher selves of highly evolved souls, it's a fairly small group, that do what they can to guide incarnations on Earth. There's an interplanetary council with representatives from, and I'm telling you this because I've heard it repetitively from clients. That's why I believe it's true. There's an interplanetary council made up of representatives, highly evolved souls from various interplanetary settings, including Earth. There's an Angelic Realm council. So we're in body to evolve as an individual soul, but we're in body to evolve humanity as well as the universe. We're really working on, each of us, becoming a guide. We're working on evolving to become a spiritual guide in order to help others and in order to contribute to the expansion of the universe. So the goal is to gain wisdom and knowledge and serve as a guide. And the goal is to expand life here and life in the universe. Some people have told me that ultimately we can evolve to a level where we almost rejoin, to use my client's term, the all. I think that takes a lot of lives and a lot of evolution. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of what you say, and don't take this the wrong way, it sounds so much like Scientology, but which maybe they were.
We were involved 16 years. It really is.
But maybe he just capitalized upon a discovery other people had made. Whatever you say, I'm vehemently opposed to the organization.
And I've never been involved with Scientology.
But there's
so.
some good stuff in there.
But what I'm saying, the mechanisms and doing past life regressions and the things that people have said when I've audited them, and it just so exactly mirrors, even what you just said, mirrors the same things that we hear. To me, knowing that there's a way to do it without having to pay a ton of money, that's even more appealing. Is to find out about.
Lose your house.
I'm being serious and sarcastic at the same time, but it's very similar. It's so similar, and like there's something there, and I guess you hear in different people you come in contact with as patients or customers, whatever you call them.
Yeah.
You see the same patterns, these same things, you hear the same things.
Well, I think if you study spiritual traditions in the world, you're going to see overlap. And the key is not using it for ego aggrandizement. I think that's the key. I'm not saying I know all the valid information and nobody else does. I can tell you where it came from, so, it came from clients. But you can study various traditions in the world and find sort of a common amount of content. Yeah. For me, my love is guiding individual clients. My love is helping clients discover what past life explains something they need to release in life today or embrace in life today, and who are they at the soul level? How do they plan to come into body and why? What's their purpose? Who are the souls they incarnate with regularly? That's called a soul group or a soul pod. Who are their guides? Why are they here? So I'll just add, I know that we're getting close to needing to finish. You all know, because it's already been talked about, there are books in the back.
Can you talk about that hell business? Before you close, you said there's no hell?
Say more. There is no hell. I don't believe there
Well, I
is.
think there is.
Well, if there is hell that exists,
When
it
you said
exists.
there are several layers, like 7 layers, and it's the God.
I think if there's hell in life on Earth
Yeah.
that is highly complicated.
So you're
I
saying
have a
hell
question.
at the astral level or just below or something?
I'll be honest, I
Because
don't.
I experienced a hell in an
What?
outer body experience.
So if you experienced a hell, then
I
probably
consider it.
what you're experiencing is lower levels of the astral plane, where there is nefarious energy, where there is negative nefarious energy. I've
There were
experienced
like-
that myself.
There were like imps, it was, the sound was like this chords.
Right.
How do I say, that the
Right.
sound was not musical, it was just like,
And I think they're trying to pull us off track. If that's what you're talking about, I do think that's real. And that happens at those lower levels of the astral plane, where negative energy can exist. Yeah.
is Saint Michael, is Michael an archangel, is he a saint, or is he a guide?
My understanding is that Archangel Michael is one of 4 archangels who you might say are senior level angels in the angelic realm.
Are they guides, can they be a guide?
Oh, yes, yeah. The archangels at times show up with clients as guides. And if you're guided by an archangel, which is totally feasible, if you're guided by an archangel, you are probably a rather evolved soul, because that is a rather evolved guide. If you're a less evolved soul at this time, and there's nothing bad about that, we all have to climb that ladder of evolution, then you're guided by a somewhat less evolved soul. Yeah, I mean, you'll have to.
We're good.
If-
Real quick, what I was thinking is we could do this. Is everybody enjoying this?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. And we could do this, do the book signing, and then instead, the launch, whoever wants to come back, because it's, you can do lunch or not, but I wanna make sure everybody comes back and doesn't linger here forever.
Right.
We could go, a little bit longer, do the book signing, and then, is that good?
That's fine.
You got, or how about you guys? Do you have another, you wanna hear another question or
There's
two?
a few more questions.
A couple more questions, maybe?
I speak here
Maybe another
tonight
10
at
minutes,
7.
and then we'll do book signing. Because
Yeah.
I feel like that, I feel a pull that people have questions, and I don't want you to leave feeling, because to me, this is not just a speech, this feels like part of our soul is, give me something. So,
That's fine. Okay, I will not do my closing. That's fine. I was,
am I throwing you off? I don't
No, no,
mean
no,
to.
no,
Okay.
no. I didn't want to throw you off. I'm following.
I'm feeling
I'm
the
good.
pull from people, they
I'm
want to come
totally good. Okay.
tonight, yeah,
So-
I gotta come back tonight.
Okay, so please come back tonight, but go ahead and ask your questions now.
I have a question. So you said we evolve, right? So we evolve to be guides. Do we ever evolve to be angels, or that is like a different kind? Like you say, the Pleiadian, I don't know the name in English.
That is a
Pleiadian.
different kind. If you're an
Okay.
angelic realm soul, you are an angelic realm soul.
Okay.
And if you're an AR soul, you are highly evolved if you come here.
Okay.
Because all souls in the angelic realm are highly evolved. And they're pure. I mean, you can just, wish I could bring somebody right up
But we
here.
don't mix, right? So if we are air, or if we are interplanetary, or we are angel, right? So this is 3 different kinds. That's what you're trying to
Yes.
say, right? Okay.
3 different types of souls that can incarnate on Earth. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, are there a fixed number of souls, or are there new souls being created now?
Well, that's a tricky, I'm not saying that's a tricky question, it's a tricky question to answer. I do not think there's a fixed number of souls. The reason it's hard to answer is because advanced souls, in many cases like us, we are incarnating in more than one body simultaneously. So you can read about this in 2 of my books. You can read about what is generally called split incarnation. If you're an evolved soul, you may be incarnating, more than one aspect of your soul is incarnating. Why? Why does that happen? Happens because you're an evolved soul. So only an evolved soul can manage more than one incarnation energetically at one time. You're also contributing 3 reasons. Second one is your soul can evolve faster because you're working on different karma in each incarnation. And you can contribute more greatly to the evolution of the planet if you're incarnating on Earth. So it's sort of impossible you know, if it wasn't your question, but if your question was, well, Linda, how many souls do you think there are? That would be so hard to answer, but because we do exist in more than one body at once.
The follow-up question.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
we've been talking a lot about souls and about guides and all that. Based on your experience with regression, what is your understanding of the concept of God?
Mhm. It's a great question. Well, my understanding of God is that, okay, first let's just remove it from any religious context, okay? Because obviously there isn't an Islamic God and a Jewish God and a Buddhist God, and I mean, that's bogus in my humble opinion. And I of course have no opinions. God is a high frequency, highly evolved frequency, and my understanding is it's a composite soul. It is not like a soul, it's a group soul. And it exists, you might say, in the upper levels of, you know, way beyond fifth dimension. I do believe there is such a thing as God. I tend to use other terms. So some of the terms I hear are, of course, God, the Tao, Great Spirit, the Source. A word that my guides often use with me, and I've heard from clients as well, is the Manu, M-A-N-U, the Manu. It's an Eastern term, but it connotes the high frequency of wisdom above the angelic realm. But the Manu can't, like, I don't want to make it human, it's not human, but they can't snap their fingers and go, poof, we just solved Earth's problems. And here's a message, and I'm glad we're going further, and I might have remembered to say this tonight, but I think it's one of the core pieces of information that needs to be said. Through our actions, Earth evolves. Not from God divinely saying, you know, all will be well and we're going to fix this. So right action is the key. And again, right action might be organic gardening or supporting that political candidate whose beliefs fit in alignment with yours, or taking care of your grandchild one day a week, you know, or. But it's right action that I think is the only way the Earth will progress.
So is there a point where the soul ever merges with God?
My best answer to that is I think that's possible, but I don't. Occasionally there are questions, I'm not sure the answer. I'm not sure that we do ultimately.
Because getting back to his question earlier about what's the end game, you know,
Well,
is it to become one with God, or
I don't believe the end game is to become one with God. I believe the end game is for the universe to advance, and in particular, because this is where we live, for humanity to become more healthy and in integrity. I think that's a piece of the end game.
But technically, God created the universe.
God is not perfect, okay? And that's the misnomer, okay? And you don't have to believe what I tell you. Do with it what you want. I think that in the Western world, we're so taught this notion of perfection and punishment. And in my humble opinion, that doesn't exist.
Then why karma?
Because of free will choice. Karma is, we're balancing our own free will actions from the past.
We're trying to become better and better and
Right.
better and
We're
better.
growing and learning. It's sort of like, if, it's a crazy example I often use, if you're in elementary school and on Monday you get to spelling words, and on Friday you need to be able to spell 8 out of 10 correct. You take a preliminary spelling test on Wednesday, and you know, you don't get a great grade, you're not put down for not doing it well. But on Wednesday, you've misspelled 5 words. You need to work on learning how to spell most of those words better so that by Friday you can pass the test. That's evolution. That's how our soul evolves. The score on the preliminary spelling test is like karma. I haven't learned this yet. I need to make a free will choice to balance. Linda had to make a free will choice to learn to be a committed mother, okay? Because I made free will choices in the past to not do that. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Sorry, to make one more connection back to the NDE experience.
Yeah.
There are a lot of experiencers that within their NDE experience, they claim to have an experience of oneness or unity.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you explain that within your understanding of the soul?
Well, I mean,
What is that experience of unity that they?
I think that has a lot to do with what we are to come back here. We're to experience that because we're to bring that need back here to Earth when we don't permanently die, and keep working on unity in our life today. I think that's one of the main reasons to experience that beauty and unity is to act in body and not die.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was thinking about this actually, it was just today, but I had a spiritual experience back when I was a teenager. And it was one where an angel appeared to me, and I had that moment, if it could be compared to an NDE of complete bliss, oneness, love. And I just think about it and I'm there. And I was thinking, but if I always stayed there,
Right?
how would I evolve?
That's good.
I could not evolve if I was always in the bliss.
That's right.
That's good.
That's right.
We have to have the contrast.
Yes.
And I've also come to learn and accept, in my humble opinion, that it's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It's just, it just is. There's no good or bad, right or wrong. But it's the constant, continuous evolving. But I
Yes.
have to have the contrast in order to
That,
evolve.
how do we know how to be if we don't experience how not to be?
Right, exactly.
And
Right.
I've heard clients say that,
Yeah.
but that's how we learned how to behave.
Right. Now, just because I had that experience doesn't make me a saint.
Yes, it does. I know you. I think so.
You know, I mean, I went on to do many, many things that I regret. And I don't normally out myself, but I'm a recovering alcoholic. And through working the steps, I had many spiritual experiences, and one where we take an inventory of those things that we did, and we try to make amends for those things. And I remember thinking when I was going through that process, I don't have to wait to cross over to see the council. I'm doing it here
Ding, 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 ding.
now.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And how blessed I have that opportunity.
And some of us are coming into body, probably a lot of us, if not all of us in this room. Yes, we're still evolving. We wouldn't be in body if we didn't still have stuff to work on. We also came into body to be teachers. Each in our own way. Teachers, healers, whatever word you want to use. And it doesn't matter how you do it, but we came into body to be active on this planet. And so we came to be teachers as well as learners. You know, it's like, I mean, is my life smooth all the time? Of course not. And sometimes I get bothered by sometimes how challenging it is. Of course I do. But I know why I'm in body. And I don't mean I know that I'm supposed to stand on a stage and speak. I don't mean it that way. It's like, or I know I have purpose. And that's crucial to feel like you have purpose. It doesn't matter what that purpose is. It's very, I'll be honest, just be candid. It's very unusual for me to come back to Charlotte. And given what my life is now, I never dreamed, and I'm just being really honest, I never dreamed I'd be standing up here talking to a group, and I'd written 3 books that are published by a respected publisher, and we travel about 50% of the time around the U.S. and outside the U.S. for the work that we do. When I was in Charlotte, I was raising kids. I was working at what used to be the Knoll Clinic down there, and some of you may remember the N-A-L-L-E, the Knoll Clinic at the corner of Kings Road and East Boulevard. And I worked with mommies, and you know, I helped new mommies with lactation and blah blah blah. I never thought I'd be standing up here talking to people, traveling here, there, and wherever. But I do know I did come into body to teach about the soul, because that's who we are at the core. So let me just add just a couple things to finish. Books in the back. All those books are also on Kindle. So if you'd rather read on Kindle, go to Amazon and read on Kindle. I do have a couple of openings for the soul regression, between life soul regression, while we're here, one on Monday, one on Tuesday. So if anybody's interested in your own individual regression, if you will, either talk to me afterwards or talk to Earl, and he'll talk to you about all of that. If you're interested in just being on our mailing list, it's just an email mailing list. You'll get a couple, 3 emails a month or so. There's a sign-up sheet. And please come back, a bunch of flyers. Please come back at 7, and I will, the tricky part about tonight is that I have 2 hours, and I also will give some foundation. So just know that there'll be some foundation, and then I'm going to expand on a lot of these topics and kind of be as workshopy as you can be in that.
Can you tell us, I don't know if you can hear me, can you tell us, so it's here at 7 o'clock to 9?
Yeah.
And what is the cost, and when should people arrive if they're interested?
I would say be here,
Is there-
6:45.
Okay.
I believe it's $20. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Okay.
It's on the flyer.
All right.
Go ahead.
And also, wanted to, we definitely want to be able to purchase any books, and will you be happy to sign as well?
Oh, sure. Oh,
And then also, do you offer any online classes or teachings as well?
Yeah.
Like Zoom or whatnot, because that we could sign up and be a part of, that way we could be your fans, stalkers, and your stalker fans.
Stalker fans.
And, just so people can
Yeah.
communicate and stay in touch.
Go to our website. It's I'll run together, Raven like the bird, R-A-V-E-N, heart, like heart light, but ravenheartcenter.com.
We have
Ravenheartcenter.com.
cards, we have business cards.
Okay, we got business cards.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to start a virtual course, a 5-week virtual course, not this coming week, but the following week. And I'll be talking about what I call your soul ancestry. So it's 5 weeks, it's an hour and a half, 1 night a week. It's all archived. If you can't be there live, you can listen to it afterwards. It's video on the Zoom platform. I'll be teaching about earth-based IP and AR souls and life purpose. So we'll be working on that together. Go to our website and you'll see more of the options.
Do you also do training for people that want to be regression specialists? Because that would be perfect. We really need one for IANDS. And
Yes.
and we've done book 1 and Dianetic auditing, which we've heard some stuff, but I really want to use that as my resume. So do you train?
Yes, I train
Okay.
people in past life and between life regressions, like 101 and 201.
Perfect. Okay, good. That sounds good. Well, gosh, what I was wondering, do you mind if we take a photograph of the speaker and then do the book signing? Is that cool? And then, okay, that's good. And I don't want to push lunch too much, because I really want everybody to come back if they can, because this is information that's rare, that have you heard anything? I mean, you've heard bits and pieces, but have you heard this much good stuff in one sitting in a long time? I have not.
Oh,
This
you're
is
so nice.
fantastic.
Thank you.
First of all, let's show her our love. Okay?